This is Peter Laws in Norman, Oklahoma. On the air since 1987, you're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of radio about radio every Sunday morning on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and live streaming around the globe at ckut.ca.
Welcome, everybody, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, August the 11th, 2024, here on CKUT 90.3 FM radio in Montreal. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill. We are here every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. We thank you for tuning in. We'll give you all of our contact information at the end of the show, so we hope you'll stay tuned throughout today's program. We have some news from here in Canada and some international news from New Zealand, the BBC, and Radio Nepal, which is pretty interesting. So we'll get to that in a little bit. First off, though, we're starting with a story out of Vancouver, British Columbia. AM 730 off the air leaves Vancouver, British Columbia without a dedicated traffic broadcast. This is by Kaja Antic of The Peak via Radioworld. Now, we here in Montreal have an AM radio station that does nothing but traffic reports all day long. It's a French language radio station. And strangely enough, on the very same frequency, 730 kilohertz out in BC, they had a traffic station as well. Well, the story starts off with one word: gone. The Callsign CKGO AM 730 was the only 24/7 all-traffic station in the Vancouver area. Listeners now tune into 730 AM to be redirected to AM 980, a news and talk radio station with intermittent traffic updates. Both stations are owned and operated by Chorus Entertainment, which also owns Global News and other mass media assets. Chorus has seen its revenue decreased recently and has responded with a plan to cut 25% of its full-time workforce by the end of August. Chorus Entertainment told the Vancouver Sun, "We have made the difficult decision to reduce our AM radio programming in Vancouver and Edmonton. As a result, certain roles have been impacted." Listeners from across the Lower Mainland voiced their disappointment on X, with many describing the station as an essential public service due to radio's easy accessibility and hands-free operation. Many tuned into the station for traffic updates, no matter the time, especially during snowstorms. On a night where Vancouver's infrastructure and road care failed us, people could still turn on the station and know that we were right there with them, former AM 730 anchor Lucas Selle noted in an X thread regarding the 2022 storm. There is an active petition with over 400 signatures on change.org to save the station. The petition intends to put pressure on Chorus and the CRTC to reinstate the traffic-based radio station. AM 730 rebroadcasting CKNW 980 is being viewed as an interim solution, as Chorus eventually hopes to only operate one AM station in the Lower Mainland. Chorus Entertainment's statement noted, quote, "Following the interim period, Chorus will only operate one AM news talk station in each of Vancouver, CKNW, and Edmonton, CHED. Radio stations, specifically those that broadcast on AM frequencies, are increasingly rare in Vancouver, with 3 shutting down in recent years. AM 730 joins AM 1040 and AM 1410, which were taken off the air last year by Bell Media. There's still intermittent traffic information on the 980 and 1130 frequencies. Excluding 730, there are now only 7 active AM radio stations serving Metro Vancouver. 690 hosts CBC Radio 1, 980 and 1130 are news talk stations, and 650 is the only remaining dedicated sports station. AM 1200, 1320, and 1470 host a variety of multilingual programs. So this is not new in Canada. This is happening in a lot of cities across the country where the major radio station owners have been shutting down or selling off some of their AM stations. Our traffic station here in Montreal, not extremely popular. I don't know if there'd be much of a protest if they decided to pull the plug on it, but I was kind of surprised to see this story out of Vancouver that a lot of people were disappointed with the station leaving. I don't know. It's like we were talking before the show about all the different ways that people have available to them now with their smartphones and what have you, with apps and maps and what have you about traffic. It's kind of surprising that so many people were still using the AM radio station.
There's a lot of people still without a smartphone. I mean, not everyone has one, and I could see why there could be a use for radio, traffic radio, basically. But still, the majority of people are getting, their smartphone or some GPS of some sort and getting really live updates. These updates on your apps are like way better than any update that you have to wait for. And let's say it, go and listen through tons of ads on the radio station at the same time. One of the interesting things about it, and we talked about it just before we recorded the show, and it's the fact that I had noticed one evening when there was a earthquake here in Montreal, which always makes the news because we don't have them very often. There was really no other radio station live. Most were in recorded shows or just music stations. And at least what was interesting about the traffic station in Montreal is it was still live at 11 p.m. And they actually started talking about, well, we think something's happening. Maybe we had an earthquake. People are calling us. That aspect of it was interesting, even though it's a traffic station, because there's somebody there. At least they were able to talk about an event that just happened. So that's also an aspect to think about on these stations as we move and lower the amount of stations available and put, recorded programs on all the time. That live, immediate information gets lost.
Yeah, I think what keeps the traffic station in Montreal going is that they get a subsidy from Transport Quebec, which is a government department, to keep that station going. They were the ones who first funded it to get it on the air. So, that might make a little bit of a difference compared to the one in Vancouver, which was strictly a commercial undertaking.
In our next news item, we have AM/FM radio leads the way for ad-supported audio in the car. This is by Nick Langan of Radioworld. AM and FM radio accounts for 86% of ad-supported audio listening, by far the most consumed audio medium behind the wheel, according to a new data analysis from Cumulus Media and its affiliated radio network Westwood One. By using findings from Edison Research Quarterly Share of Ear study, for the second year, the broadcast groups analyzed data that gauge survey participant listening habits and their primary vehicle. The aforementioned figure was up slightly from 85% in last year's survey. Podcasts were a distant second, accounting for 7% of listening. For product design and operations teams at auto manufacturers, it is important to understand the massive use of AM/FM radio among their customers, wrote Pierre Bouvard, Chief Insights Officer of the Cumulus Media and Westwood One Audio Active Group. Overall, among both ad-free and ad-supported content, AM and FM radio led the way, claiming 60% of in-car audio listening. Ad-free Sirius XM was second with 13% of listening. Notable from the survey was the finding that in-car radio listening appeared to be trending back towards pre-pandemic levels. 49% of all radio listening was found to be done in the car in the first quarter 2024, compared to a low of 40% in the first quarter of 2022. In first quarter 2020, just prior to the pandemic, the percentage of radio listening done in the car was 55%. The survey also analyzed listening shares by both OEM, the original equipment manufacturer, parent, and major auto brands. In terms of brands, AM and FM radio led the way across the board, with as high as 71% share among Dodge vehicles, with both ad-supported and ad-free audio listening. The lowest shared radio had was 39% among those driving BMWs. Edison's quarterly surveys query participants on the model, year, and brand of their primary vehicle. Share of Ear has surveyed 4,000 Americans annually since 2014 to measure audio consumption habits. So this is interesting, and we see it all the time. Cars, that's kind of really one of the primary areas where most people listen to radio. And I find it interesting that they have actually done the survey to also account for the different brands and the way that it changes the people's habit of listening to audio.
Yeah, that part of it's really interesting. Lower end vehicle people are listening to more in their car than people who have very expensive cars.
Yeah.
Does that tell you that the people with the expensive cars are using something else, or they're not listening to anything? Or I'm not sure what that means, but it's an interesting statistic for sure. But the difference between ad-supported versus non-ad-supported is dramatic too. So that means that even though so many cars have Sirius XM, which advertising free channels and whatever, people are still by majority listening to conventional radio stations.
Yeah, and I mean, these new platforms, the other platforms like Sirius XM, are popular, but I think a lot of people just maybe don't want to pay for something. They just like the fact that radio stays free because it's ad supported, and people like that.
Yep. Interesting study, though. I really like the part about the different models of cars, though. That's fascinating. We now take you all the way down to the South Pacific to Radio New Zealand and Samoa Capital Radio. They are teaming up to support the Samoan language. This comes from a media release from Radio New Zealand. Radio New Zealand and Samoa Capital Radio will be working more closely together to serve Samoan speakers and language learners in New Zealand. A new partnership agreement to be signed today at Samoa Capital Radio Studios in Porirua will see Radio New Zealand and Samoa Capital Radio collaborate during Samoan Language Week, which is held each year to celebrate Gagana Samoa as the third most spoken language in New Zealand. The agreement also formalizes the sharing of news stories and digital and social media expertise between the organizations. RNZ will make RNZ National and RNZ Pacific news bulletin scripts available to Samoa Capital Radio for translation and broadcast in Samoan on 106.1 FM and online live streams. Samoa Capital Radio will share its material with Radio New Zealand and will help out where possible with video, photos, and other news gathering from Samoa, especially Apia, where it has recently opened a brand new studio. Radio New Zealand Pacific and Samoa Capital Radio will explore opportunities to share digital and social media expertise, including through staff exchanges. RNZ Chief Executive and Editor-in-Chief Paul Thompson said he was pleased to partner with a media organization that serves the Samoan community and champions the Samoan language. Radio New Zealand is committed in our position as a non-commercial public media organization to make our content accessible to all communities in New Zealand. The partnership with Samoa Capital Radio is particularly important as it supports our efforts to provide comprehensive Pacific coverage and serves audiences who prefer to consume news in Samoan or from a Pacific lens. Samoa Capital Radio Chief Executive Afamasaga Tialu Moresi said that Radio New Zealand was a trusted multimedia organization in New Zealand, and the station was deeply grateful for the partnership agreement. Working collaboratively with RNZ during the Samoan Language Week to celebrate the Gagana Samoa is a great step forward. The sharing of news stories and digital and social media expertise will benefit both organizations. RNZ's widely sourced news stories are very informative and educational. Translating news items from English to Samoan will help inform the Samoan community in New Zealand and abroad with up-to-date current events broadcast by RNZ when they happen. Samoa Capital Radio listeners will also increase the audience that benefit from RNZ news stories. And a little bit about Samoa Capital Radio. Their mission is to entertain, educate, inform, and culturally and spiritually grow Samoans living in New Zealand through the use of their language. It was the first Pacific Island station established and registered in New Zealand in 1992, and 98% of its broadcast is in the Samoan language. It operates under the Siufofoga o le Lamua Trust, and is partly funded by New Zealand on the Air. It broadcasts in Wellington on 106.1, Facebook, and YouTube. It also has a website with helpful links to Samoan language programs and services. In 2023, Samoa Capital Radio launched Gagana Samoa, a free Android and iOS app to support the Samoan language learners, with the support of the Ministry of Education. RNZ and Samoa Capital Radio worked together previously on Sa'ili Malo, Seeking a Better Life, a personal history series about dreams and struggles of early Samoan settlers to New Zealand. So that's a nice cooperation, keeping a language going. I know we're having some of that here in Canada with some of the Indigenous languages, where unfortunately some of those languages are being lost with the younger people. So sounds like it might be a bit of a similar situation in New Zealand. So this joint partnership should help that out quite a bit.
Yep, it's pretty nice to see that Radio New Zealand is really very serious about its broadcast in the Pacific, being there for all the communities that exist in the different islands there. There's so many of them. So this is very, very interesting. So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is extremely active. It has several big sunspots that are ready to flare at any moment. There's been several X flares and very powerful M flares too during the week. So that means that we are waiting for possible geomagnetic stormings that could happen from the coronal mass ejections. And it seems like that type of activity will continue with all the sunspots. There's actually 4 sunspots, AR 3781, 3780, 3774, and 3777, that all have what it takes to harbor very strong X-class solar flares. So conditions are going to be up and down. Lots of radio blackouts when the solar flares happen that last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And that will probably continue throughout the week. Sunspot number 337, and listen to this, the solar flux 336. We haven't had such a high solar flux in something more like 20 years. So this is amazing and will, of course, affect propagation, especially in the higher frequencies. If you haven't looked at spaceweather.com, it is actually very interesting these days with the high solar activity. They are talking about the fact that, of course, we have a lot of sunspots on the sun-facing side of the Earth, but the far side of the sun is actually even more peppered with all sorts of sunspots, including some really big ones that changes the way the sun vibrates. So that means not only are we in very high solar activity that we haven't seen in more than 20 years, but there's even more solar activity possibly coming our way. So this is definitely conditions of solar maximum, and it's definitely a much stronger solar cycle than was predicted. And if you want to witness all of this, the fading and the blackouts from the solar flares, well, you have to turn on a radio and listen.
Hey, IRR listeners, there's another program, World of Radio, now well over 2,000 weekly editions, with multiple broadcasts on 2 major shortwave stations in the U.S., WRMI and WBCQ. Also IRRS in Europe and Unique Radio in Australia. There are several chances to hear me, Glenn Hauser, on Sunday evenings, among others, and podcasts on demand. Full schedule info plus loads of other material, especially about shortwave, at worldofradio.com.
So we have BBC World Service English announces new rebroadcasting partnership in the Cayman Islands. The the BBC press release via Association for International Broadcasting Media brief. BBC World Service English has partnered with DMS Broadcasting to bring our news, current affairs, and factual radio programming to audiences in the Cayman Islands. This partnership underscores the strategic importance of this regional hub. DMS Broadcasting is a leading radio broadcasting group based in the Cayman Islands, with 7 FM radio stations dedicated to music, entertainment, news, and information. BBC World Service English will be rebroadcast on Bobo FM 89.1 from 10:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., 5 days a week, with a variation near the end of the week, and on average 21 hours on weekends. Fred Durman, BBC's head of business development for the Americas and Europe, says the BBC is delighted to expand its reach in the Cayman Islands through this rebroadcasting agreement with DMS Broadcasting. By offering a significant number of hours of programming daily on Bobo FM 89.1, we continue our mission to inform, educate, and entertain a global audience. This initiative not only extends our footprint, but also ensures that more listeners can access high-quality, trusted news and diverse programming from around the world. Blake Rogers, DMS Broadcasting General Manager, says, "We're thrilled to finally announce our partnership between the BBC and DMS Broadcasting. As one of the most renowned and trusted news organizations in the world, the BBC will make it possible to elevate our news products and service elements for our listeners. And as the new official BBC radio station in Cayman, Bobo 89.1 FM will be the place for news and talk in the Cayman Islands." So this is great. Expanding the BBC's World Service is definitely something good, and more people will hear the BBC and all of its news efforts.
Yeah, this gives them an alternative to, where people may have listened to BBC on World Service. They'll now be getting some local program content on one of their FM stations. And that's running for an extended period of time, going 10:30 in the morning and all the way through until 7:30 a.m. the next morning. So they're only missing, 3 hours a day?
3 hours a day.
5 days a week there. So that's really almost 24-hour-a-day service for them. So sounds pretty good. I don't think we've probably ever talked about Radio Nepal before on the program, but we have a story about them today, and it comes via Radio Nepal. Communication Minister Gurung affirms government's commitment to supporting Radio Nepal with relevant laws and policies. The Minister for Communications and Information Technology, Prithvi Subba Gurung, has stressed the need for establishing Radio Nepal as the country's best broadcasting institution. Speaking at a program to welcome him at Radio Nepal, a Singha Durbar today, Communications Minister Gurung emphasized that Radio Nepal must adapt to evolving technologies and enhance its programs to become the premier broadcasting organization in Nepal. As a government spokesperson, Minister Gurung affirmed the government's commitment to supporting Radio Nepal with relevant new laws and policies to aid its development and improvement. He urged all relevant authorities, organizations, and officials to fulfill their roles effectively to ensure the dissemination of information to the public and to achieve financial stability. Likewise, Secretary at the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology, Radhika Arial, also pledged support for improving Radio Nepal's organizational, technological, and managerial capabilities to boost its financial and commercial potential. Similarly, Radio Nepal's acting executive director, Kajendra Kahatri, provided an overview of the organization's past and current status. He noted that Radio Nepal is in the process of transforming its broadcast content to align with public service broadcasting standards. On the occasion, the communications minister also inspected Radio Nepal's studios in Singha Durbar.
So this is kind of nice. We don't, it's a place we don't hear a lot about in any media outlet. So this is good news that they want to consolidate and make their broadcasting even more, professional and out there. There used to be a shortwave service of Radio Nepal a long time ago, and that was terribly hard to hear in North America. I've never heard it myself, but it's nice to see that they're going to ramp up their own broadcasting service.
There's some really nice photographs on the website, radionepal.gov.np, of the tour that they did of the Radio Nepal studios. So if you want to check that out, you can also listen to them streaming on that website. So again, it's radionepal.gov.np.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests and events.
We have a special event to talk about this time. It's the 25th anniversary of Poland joining NATO. And to mark this occasion, there is a special amateur radio Callsign and station operating. This is via Eric Cottrell's ham radio, Muse, and news column in the CIDX Messenger for August. Marking the 25th anniversary since Poland joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, special callsign Hotel Foxtrot 25 NATO, NATO, is active until the 31st of August. They do have a QSL via the club logs OQRS, but only 100 limited edition QSL cards will be distributed. These will be issued first come, first served. So call in quickly. For details, a certificate of the certificate that is available, visit the website, which is hf25nato.spaward.pl. So check this out quickly. They may already be gone because they have been on for a little while already. So look for that special call sign.
There's the Scandinavian Amateur Radio Teleprinter Group Worldwide RTTY contests from 0 hours Zulu August 17th to 16 hours Zulu August 18th. The bands 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters, and it's radio teletype only.
And there is a North American QSO party organized by the National Contest Journal, 1800 Zulu August 17th to 0559 Zulu August 18th. And the bands, 160 through 10 meters, no work bands, and it is a SSB phone-only event.
There's the CVADX contest, CW, 1800 hours Zulu August 17th to 2100 hours Zulu August 18th, organized by the Radio Amateurs School of Communications Club, Portugal. And the bands are 160 to 10 meters and no work bands, and it's in CW.
And that is going to do it for us today. We do thank you for tuning in and listening to our program. We're here every week at CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Our email address, if you'd like to write us, radioreport@yahoo.com. We are live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. We have a Facebook group, International Radio Report. We invite you to join the group. Our YouTube channel, where you can listen to our program at your convenience, as well as past programs and the current show, youtube.com/@IRR. And our X account is @IRRCKUT. We invite you to follow us there. That will do it for this week. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you again next Sunday on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Bye-bye, everyone.